Hey everybody, this is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop. You're listening to a shift break episode that I'm recording live here at the Denver airport. Well, I guess all of the podcasts are live until they're not, but actually I'm coming back from Coffee Fest in LA, which was fantastic. I really love that I got to see quite a few of you who are fans of the show. And I'm just processing everything that happened with the latte art competition, with speaking and hanging out with friends. It was just really a fantastic time. One of the things that I was able to pick up from this time around was a lot of good conversations after my talks. I had quite a few conversations with people, in particular about a subject that we've actually covered on the show before, and that's the subject of being able to plan out change in a way that does not throw basically the entire cafe under the bus. If you're going to introduce change, you need to introduce it in a very organized way, in a way that considers the people who are going to be responsible for maintaining the, whatever it is, the piece of equipment, the idea, whatever, if it's a menu item. Lots of times, though, what we see is an owner or somebody in charge gets a really good idea, or they get really motivated for, internally, they just feel like they want to introduce an item to the menu. Maybe they came to Coffee Fest and they want to introduce some kind of a chai beverage that they don't normally have. And the baristas find it on the counter one day, and there it is, and not many instructions. Now we just kind of have to figure out what to do. And it might be relatively simple, and that's not the point, though. The point is, when you do something like that, you create this environment where people don't know what to expect. You really basically create chaos. You create chaos when you don't consider the employees, when you don't consider the how far out your decision branches into the business, how many people are affected, and have you thought through the implications of that action that you're about to take. We're all about making haste in hustle in business. There's a lot of talk about just getting things done and shipping it and making these decisions quickly, because when the inspiration strikes, you want to just go with it and put it in play, because you're worried that if you don't, you're going to lose your opportunity. Well, I would like to say that you can take your time, especially if it's a worthwhile idea. If it's something that's going to contribute well to your cafe or to the lives of your baristas or whatever, you can take the time to think through all the ramifications of that thing. And honestly, you can't afford not to, because if you don't do that, then it won't set well. It won't be accepted. It won't have time to settle into the pre-existing culture, the way things are done right now. You need to kind of give it time to fit in to that culture. And I want to say that the people I talked to about this were kind of frustrated with the owners of the businesses. And the owners were doing things that were either inconsistent or inconsiderate. Now, I listened to the stories, and it seemed to me that, they were, telling the truth about the situation. And I've experienced this myself, where owners can tend to take for granted the work of their managers, just as much as a manager can take for granted the work of their baristas and the people who are just on the floor. This is the chaos that drives people into the arms of other cafes or other professions. We've got a lot of turnover in coffee, and one of the main reasons we have turnover is not just because, people can't make a sustainable living in coffee. Most of the turnover we experience, or a good deal of it from my perspective, they go to another coffee shop, and they do that because they're just sick of the culture in the one they currently work in. So what I really want us to focus on, in the event that you have the authority to put something into play in the cafe, a new piece of equipment, a menu item, a new policy, here's what you should do. You should be considerate and take consideration over all of the areas this thing will affect. That's step one. And step 2 is to be consistent. When you tell one barista something that you want to see changed in the cafe, but you've got 9 employees, you need to make sure that you're willing to and are physically able to tell every single person so that they understand. And we all know that doesn't happen. We all know that we just want the word to get passed around, and there's this telephone game that happens where it starts to get misinterpreted, and it doesn't end up the way you want it to. And ultimately, we kind of have ourselves to blame when we don't really count the cost of implementing a new strategy or policy or menu item. So be consistent. Another area of being consistent, I think, is in the way that you tell people to do things is the way that you yourself should do things also. If it has to do with the way you talk to customers, if it's the way you make a menu item or something like that, then you can't just give yourself a pass because you have authority. It's actually the furthest thing from the truth. You have way less flexibility than they do because you know better. So you don't give yourself an out. You are the example. The last thing is you have to be patient. If you can't wait for a change to take hold and be assimilated into the culture of the shop and the way you do things, don't put it in. Because an impatiently implemented strategy or idea is one that's going to drive people away. It's going to drive them crazy. You're going to be disappointed, and so will they, and you're going to breed bitterness in the cafe. And that's a little bit of what I was hearing from some people who are frustrated because they were trying to be orderly. They were trying to be consistent, but there was a chaotic element being introduced to the cafe because the owners were not doing those 3 things. They were not being considerate. They weren't being consistent. In other words, they were acting differently than what they were expecting other people to act like. And they were also not very patient with the process of doing it the right way the first time. So if you really want to hang on to your staff and you want a successful implementation of a really good idea, then I would take some of this advice for sure. Just know this, that even if people go along with it and smile and pursue what you want them to, it doesn't mean that they're 100% on board. It's their job to do what you want them to do. Okay? They could be looking for another job somewhere else. In fact, for some people this weekend, after hearing about what was happening in the cafe, I kind of told them, look, do your best to do what you are hired to do and embrace what they want you to do, and don't do it begrudgingly. Do it with a good heart, but you might want to start looking for another job because you don't, loyalty in a situation where you're being taken for granted. You have your own career to look out for. These are the things that people are thinking about, even if they're not talking to you about it. So don't let that happen to you and your staff. Be considerate, be consistent, and be patient when you want to put something in play and communicate a policy or whatever. That's one of the things that's just been on my mind since leaving Coffee Fest. We have so many good people in our shops that just need to be treated with that kind of dignity. And we don't have to lose them. And with a little effort and applying some of these principles, I think you can do just that. So that is it for me today. I'm going to sign off, and recording this in the airport was kind of fun. So I'm going to take the rest of the day and celebrate my 40th birthday, which is when I'm recording this also. So I hope this was helpful to you, and we'll see you here next Thursday for another edition of Shift Break, from Keys to the Shop.